All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another podcast episode. Today, we're going to cover all of the action from the weekend, that including Dimitri Bivol, Adam Azim, the MVPW card, Raymond Ford versus Oshaki Foster. We're also going to preview next weekend's action, and in the middle, we're going to do all the breaking news. A lot of stuff to talk about this week, and we're going to do my moments of the week. What's caught my eye in the world of combat sports this week? Before we get started, if you could all first head down the bottom there, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please do at the end leave all your thoughts in the comments below. All right, only one place to start, and that is Charlie Edwards versus Siko Nkoto. Nkoto beating Charlie Edwards via unanimous decision 116, 113, 116, 112, 117, 111, and giving him a shot at the IBF title. He's now the IBF mandatory super flyweight challenger. That belt is actually being fought for this weekend between Andrew Maloney and Wilibardo Garcia in Japan. So the winner of that will be facing Nkoto next. A good performance by Nkoto. Charlie Edwards, for me, he started way too slow. He picked up the pace in the second half of the fight, and that's where he won him his rounds. But I thought Nkoto most definitely won that fight, outworked him, outboxed him, and well deserved of that win. We now move to the boxer card. We're going to start with Joel Kottawa beating Will Harrison via round 8 retirement. A very good performance there by Joel Kottawa. By the end of the 8th round, Will Harrison was a complete mess. Eye cut, and he got stopped in the corner. The team said, you can't go any further. And I think that's the right decision. He was being beaten worse and worse every single round. And the later that fight got, the more damage he was taking. Joel Cotter was just way too good for him. The counter punching, that Philly shell that he was using, Will Harrison couldn't land a single punch. So great performance there by Joel Kottawa. Francesca Hennessy defeats Aurora DiPercio in round 6. Fran Hennessy in the second round had a massive mouse under her eye. That was caused, I believe, by a headbutt. It was a bit of a mess at the start of this fight. The referee was tolerating none of the nonsense. We saw a lot of clinching, a lot of pushing, DiPercio leading with the head. A very messy start to that fight. And Fran Hennessy, I thought it was a great performance by her. I thought her best tool in that fight was that constant left hook to the body and then following it straight up to the head. Worked to the body early, which did pay dividends in the end. I was very surprised Aurora DiPercio actually survived the 5th round. Fran Hennessy really started to lay on the punches. She was mean and nasty with the punches as well. These weren't just shoe-shining punches. She was chasing her down in the ring, getting her up against the ropes, and just unleashing punches to body and head. Constant activity. The referee really closed in at the end of the 5th round, but DiPercio sees it out, comes into the 6th round, and Fran Hennessy just goes straight back to work. And it was a body shot that really folded DiPercio in half. She was out on her feet. Fran Hennessy loads on the pressure once again, gets her up against the ropes, and just starts unleashing punches, body and head, until the referee steps in. And like I said, the thing I was most impressed about in that performance from Fran Hennessy was that nastiness she showed. She showed an intent to get her out of there. She wasn't just happy with outboxing her. She had a clear game plan, was clearly the better boxer, which, you know what, we see that a lot of the time, but a lot of the time, people will just be content in saying, well, I'm outboxing him. We'll see the end of this fight. I'll win by decision every single round my way. And Fran Hennessy said, no, I want to get this chick out of here. I want to put on a great performance, and just starts putting nastiness in every single shot, and very powerful shots as well. And she is the WBC mandatory. Obviously, the WBC belt is with all the other belts in the bantamweight division. That is with Chanika Johnson. Chanika Johnson was announced in the week to be taking on Dina Thorsland. So hopefully the winner of that fight, Fran Hennessy, gets to face. And, at 21 years of age, I don't know whether she necessarily beats the winner of that fight, but no doubt in my mind is she competitive. She did set a goal that she wants to become the youngest undisputed woman to beat Gabriela Fandora. And you know what? All luck to her. The women do get chances earlier than the men. So, a 21-year-old with the amount of fights that Fran has in the men's game isn't going to be anywhere near a title shot. But the depth is a problem in the women's fighting. And look, Fran Hennessy, I think she's shown enough talent, shown enough skills to warrant a fight at the highest level. Like I said, I'm just not sure whether she'll win it in her first go. But no doubt is she going to be a competitive fighter in there. And I can't wait to see if it does happen. Adam Azim just ripped through Steve Claggett. 3 rounds it took for Adam Azim to get rid of Steve Claggett. The uppercuts, man, they were mean. They were absolutely nasty uppercuts. He landed one in the very first round that broke his nose. And from then on, it was just one-way traffic. And Steve Claggett, very, very experienced. But all he did all night was basically walk down Adam Azim. Adam Azim would take a step back or pour out the jab to hold him at distance and land hooks, land uppercuts, land body shots. Destroyed him. Steve Claggett was absolutely nowhere near in that fight. Round 3, Adam Azim lands another few right uppercuts, followed by a left hook that hurts Claggett. And then Azim applies the pressure, finds the finish. The referee steps in, and a very good fight from Adam Azim. I did write down some possible opponents for Adam Azim next. I think I'd like to see him in there with Dalton Smith. I'm just not sure whether he gets that yet. He's very highly ranked in most of the governing bodies. I mean, we're talking ranks around 8 to 5 in most of the governing bodies. He's a stupendous fighter, and I think him versus Dalton Smith in England sells very, very well. And I think he's got all the skills. He does remind me of almost a smaller version of Hamza Shiraz, especially in this fight, because he was so tall, so lengthy against Steve Claggett. He was able to land those uppercuts and land those hooks at close distance, a bit like Hamza Shiraz does. I'd like to see him in there with Dalton Smith. If he can't get the world title fight, names that are around Ernesto Mercado, Sandor Martin, and I would really like to see him in there with Pierce O'Leary, the Irish fighter, but Pierce O'Leary does have a fight coming up against Mark Chamberlain in August, so you'd have to wait on that one. But Ernesto Mercado, Sandor Martin is very, very experienced, and he's a good name, I think, to have on the resume, although he's probably, not at his peak. I still think it's a good name for Adam Azim to go in there and beat. It's still an improvement on someone like Steve Claggett, and it's also a different way of fighting. He's not going to have Steve Claggett walking towards him when he takes on Sandor Martin. It's going to be a harder fight. He's going to have to pick his punches. He's going to have to, at points, chase after Sandor Martin. So I do think that's an interesting fight as well. Dimitri Bivol beats Michael Eifert via unanimous decision, 120 to 107. Eifert's first fight since August of 2024. Bivol, of course, returning from back surgery. So two guys that are out of the ring for a very long time. And Dimitri Bivol set the tone early in this fight. I mean, it was just a simple step back and lands a perfect left hook that drops Michael Eifert midway through the first round of the fight. And you thought, all right, this is going to be a quick and easy night. This is going to be just a Dimitri Bivol masterclass. He's going to outwork him. He's going to lay on the pressure, and he's going to get him out here very, very quickly. But, it's almost everything that you compliment Dimitri Bivol for, everything he is good at, was the reason we didn't see a knockout in this fight. I mean, Michael Eifert didn't offer anything, and he actually broke a record in this fight. I have it written down here. Record broken by Dimitri Bivol. He had the lowest landed punches conceded in any professional 12-round contest that went the distance. Michael Eifert landing only 12 of 349 total punches. So for a course of 12 rounds, Michael Eifert landed 12 punches, only through 349. It's not a lot, but that just shows you how elite Dimitri Bivol is and the levels in this fight to keep somebody in 12 rounds to land 12 punches. And it's not like Dimitri Bivol runs away. He's in there. He's landing a lot of punches on his own, right? He's there being the offensive attacking fighter. Elite defense from Dimitri Bivol shown again. Look, Michael Eifert, none of us thought that he was at the level. I was surprised that Michael Eifert didn't get stopped in this fight. But like I said, Dimitri Bivol, what we compliment him for, he probably gave Michael Eifert too much respect. He was, being defensively sound. He was being responsible throughout that fight, where we just wanted to see him run in there and dispatch the guy. You dropped him so early. Against somebody at that level, we almost expected, what Hamza Shiraz did to Alan Bekic. I'd put Alan Bekic and Michael Eifert in a very similar category. Go in there, get nasty, don't show him any respect, and just use your boxing skills. You're not really going to be worried about anything that's coming back, and dispatch the guy. But Dimitri Bivol was respectful. Good thing is you get 12 rounds in Dimitri Bivol when he's been sat on his ass for a very long time. Surgery, get the ring rust off you, work over the course of a fight, and now it's the big one next. What is next for Dimitri Bivol? The WBO have ordered that he takes on Callum Smith. I think it's pathetic from the WBO. The WBO know what Dimitri Bivol want and what the world of boxing want. And the fact that they're holding up that fight, making him a mandatory against Callum Smith, no disrespect to Callum Smith. I think he's a very good fighter. I think you'd give Dimitri Bivol a good fight. But we want Beterbiev Bivol 3. And I'll say this continuously. If Bivol and Beterbiev have to relinquish all their belts and anything that they've done previously to get that fight, so fucking be it. I think everybody would be interested in that fight, whether it's undisputed, whether it's unified, whether it's for no belts. We just want to see the fight. We want to see the trilogy. We want to see who's best. Take it to Russia and let's see that fight. And then guess what? After that fight, you can come back to Callum Smith. You can come back to him. All right. It is not urgent that it has to happen next fucking week. So that's my opinion on it. Dimitri Bivol, he did lay on the pressure late in that fight. Round 11, he landed a good body shot that really hurt Michael Eifert. But I think one of the big problems in that fight as well, they were fighting in an absolute football field. Did you see the size of that ring? It just allowed Michael Eifert so much room to run away, especially late in that fight. So Dimitri Bivol, it's hard to, downgrade him on anything in that fight. He pitched a perfect shutout fight, won every single round and dropped the guy. But I think we all just want to see the entertainment side of it. All right, let's move to MVP women. Desley Robinson defeats Mary Spencer 100 to 90, 100 to 90, 99 to 91 to defend her unified middleweight titles. Perfect performance from Desley Robinson. Her right hand landed flush a heap of times and wobbled Mary Spencer a heap. Mary Spencer was not in that fight from start to finish, and there was only one scorecard for me, and that was 100 to 90. I didn't give Mary Spencer one round. Look, we just want to see Desley Robinson take on Kay Scott for a undisputed fight. Two Australians, two chicks that have fought each other before, one apiece. Let's have the trilogy. Let's see who the best one is, and it is for undisputed. Amanda Serrano overwhelms and stops Cheyenne Hansen in the second round. Unbelievable performance from Amanda Serrano. It is a great fight from Amanda Serrano. She just ran in there, one goal on her mind, and that was to dispatch Cheyenne Hansen. And she did it very, very simply. Cheyenne Hansen didn't really offer much. Amanda Serrano, we know how well she hits. Followed her in, precise shots, overwhelms her, just laid on the pressure, and gets her out of there in the second round. I think a lot of people thought that Amanda Serrano would win this fight. I actually picked her by KO later in the fight. I can't remember the exact round I tipped her, but I thought Amanda Serrano, she'll get the finish, but it'll come late. But she didn't. She didn't waste any time. Like in her last fight, I thought Amanda Serrano was well and truly on top. Probably should have got the knockout. In this fight, she made no mistakes. A great performance by Amanda Serrano, but realistically, Cheyenne Hansen, when your opponent nobody backs to win the fight, I sometimes try not to overcredit because realistically, there was never going to be a different result in this fight. It was just when, not if. All right, the main event, the robbery of the year, Stephanie Han getting a majority decision victory over Holly Holm in their rematch fight. Now, look, the official scorecards were Stephanie Han winning 94 to 96, a 95 to 95 draw, and a 94 to 96 card in favor of Han. So those are obviously wrong. All right, everybody that watched that fight, everybody that knows anything about boxing knows that those cards are wrong. Me personally, I gave it 7 rounds to 3 in favor of Holly Holm. You might be able to justify 96 to 94 in favor of Holm if you gave Han one of the last few rounds. But from what I could see, Stephanie Han and Holly Holm were even up until the 5th round. I had it 3 rounds to 2 in favor of Stephanie Han. And then the last 5 rounds, could you have given any of them to Stephanie Han? Maybe the 9th round. But other than that, I thought Holly Holm ran away with it. She was the much more active fighter. She was on the front foot. She was pressing the action. She was landing the more clinical shots. And like I said, in round 9, I thought Stephanie Han landed a few good left hands. And that was probably her best round of the second half of the fight. But for Stephanie Han, for her to probably only win 3 rounds of that fight, I saw some, look, for me, for some scorecards, I saw him giving it 100 to 90 in favor of Holm. I don't think it was that fight at all. I don't think Stephanie Han did enough to get a draw or a win, but I don't think it was a landslide. I don't think you could have given Holm any more than 7 rounds. I'm talking she won either 7 rounds or 6 rounds, no more, probably no less as well. And that's where you get into this problem of a massive robbery in this fight, because it's another weird one, isn't it? Because I've seen so many posts about people saying, oh, MVP's rigged, another Jake Paul special and everything like this. And as much as I sort of despise some of the things that Jake Paul does in the boxing scene, the fact is Holly Holm is one of his fighters. If anything, Jake Paul would probably want Holly Holm to win this fight, not only because she is an MVP fighter, but also because it sets up a third fight. Holly Holm wins this, all of a sudden it's, all right, let's have a trilogy. It's one apiece, we need a third fight. I think it all works in benefit of him. It's whoever the judges were clearly seeing something that we weren't. And I watched it live and I scored it, like I said, 7 rounds to 3 in favor of Holly Holm. I do think that the people calling the fight were probably a little bit more favorable towards Holly Holm when calling it, which will sway people's perception of the fight. I went back and watched it with no commentary. I watched it again a second time with commentary, and I'm still in this sort of 6 or 7 rounds in favor of Holly Holm. The problem with this fight, right, is it depends on what you like, because Holly Holm was on the front foot. She was probably being the more aggressive fighter. She was throwing her hands more. But if you look at the total CompuBox stats, landed punches, 37 more in favor of Holly Holm, 107 to 70. That's not a whole lot of landed punches for a 10-round fight, 3-minute rounds as well. A total punch thrown of 358 for Han, 437 in favor of Holm. And then the accuracy was 20% to Han, 24% to Holm. And I think that's a key stat If you're trying to justify why the judges came to a decision victory for Hahn, the only thing I can sort of justify for the judges to come to a decision that was in favor of Stephanie Hahn was Holm was on the front foot. She was throwing her punches, but she did miss a lot of punches. The fact she only has 24% accuracy in this fight shows that she did miss a whole lot of punches. Maybe they preferred the lesser amount of punches from Hahn, stepping on the back foot, but she was landing, the more clinical shots. When she threw her hands and she landed a power punch, maybe it was a bit more eye-catching than Holm throwing her hands, not as powerful. But saying that, Holm did land a whole heap of backhands in that fight. It wasn't as though Holm's punches were all shoe shiners. She did still land quite convincing punches throughout the round. So trying to get into a headspace of how the judges came to a decision to give it to Stephanie Hahn, I'm at a loss. And that's where the robbery shit comes in. I just can't work out why they were robbing her, apart from the fact that maybe the judges were Texas natives. I don't know who the judges were, and they preferred Stephanie Hahn because she's the local girl. But you're saying MVP was the ones that robbed Holly Holm sounds backwards to me, because she is one of their fighters, and I think it's in their best interest for Holly Holm to have won that fight to set up a third fight. But it wouldn't be a Jake Paul fight night. It wouldn't be an MVP event without a whole heap of controversy to talk about. We saw it, just a few weeks ago at the Netflix MMA card with Gina Carano and Ronda Rousey. These are always going to give up stuff like this. I just can't work out how they gave it in favor of Stephanie Hahn. Like I said, I've watched it now 3 times, just trying to justify reasons Stephanie Hahn won that fight. And the only thing I can come to is maybe they just preferred her style of counterpunching. They saw a lot of misses from Holly Holm, and they liked those more precise one-off shots from Stephanie Hahn. That's about as best as I can do. But I agree with everybody. Holly Holm was shanked in that decision. She was more than definitely robbed of a win that fight. Like, the fact that she didn't even get a draw out of it is poor. You can't justify the decision saying, Stephanie Hahn's numbers were better, because those 3 numbers, she's worse in every single part of that fight. And I give Stephanie Hahn like 3 out of the first 5, but maybe 1 of the second half. And a fight like that, for me, on my eyes, how Stephanie Hahn came away with a win is beyond me. And what's next for them? I think they will go again. I think it's like, we had a very weird ending to the first one. Round 7 headbutts goes to a decision. All right, Holly Holm comes out on the worst side of that, but I would say that Holly Holm was losing the first fight. Holly Holm came into this fight, changed it up very, very much. Like, she looked a completely different fighter in this fight than she did in the first. A lot more movement. She was more active. She was more aggressive. She was letting her backhand fly a lot more. And you could see the improvement. Out of these 2 fighters, if you would say who went to the drawing board and changed things up, it was Holly Holm. Stephanie Hahn looked like she fought the same way in the first one, didn't change anything up, didn't work any harder on what she was going to do. And Holly Holm was more than deserving of victory. So 2 controversial endings. This one here, Holly Holm robbed to the first one, headbutts, the fight ends halfway through. Just go it again, and we'll see what happens there. If they go it again, I think it'll be another competitive fight, because Holly Holm had success in this fight, and Stephanie Hahn knows she has to change things up. Charlie Sheehy defeats Nike Thuran in round 9, an unbelievable knockout by Sheehy. He was comprehensively outboxing him from start to finish, but it was that 7th and 9th round where he really stamped his authority on this fight. Through those rounds, he was all over him, trying to find that finish, getting closer and closer to the finish. The referee was closing in on the fighters, and we're looking at it and saying, all right, Sheehy, all you have to do is now start punching really, really quick, get a heap of flurries going, and the referee will step in. They don't have to be powerful. Just, overload him with pressure, give the referee no decision to make him step in. And what Charlie Sheehy did was, he said, bun all that, I'm going to land a clean right hand and knock this guy out. And it was a beautiful right hand, like right on the button, up against the ropes, and it just folds Thuran instantly. And a round 9 victory to Charlie Sheehy. O'Shaquie Foster defeats Ray Ford via majority decision, 114 to 114, 118 to 110 Foster, 116 to 112 Foster. Look, I spoke about this in my instant reaction to the fight on the weekend, but I scored at 115 to 113. I thought it was a lot closer than some people did. One gave it 114 to 114, one gave it to 118 to 110. It really depends on how you scored the early rounds, because Ray Ford only probably won 1 of the last few rounds, if not any. And I'm talking from round 6 onwards. He might have won 1. So it just depends how you scored the opening few rounds. For me, I did give Ray Ford majority of the opening few rounds. The first round as well, that one's a questionable one. Nothing really happened apart from Ray Ford getting thrown out of the ring, which in my opinion, O'Shaquie Foster should have been deducted a point. That's nothing against Oshaki Foster. I just think that is something that you get deducted a point from. Wouldn't have changed the outcome. Oshaki Foster still would have won that fight. But I do think that it was a point deduction worthy. Look, Foster was all over him. And he probably had his best round in round 11 when he lands a clean punch right on the nose of Ray Ford. It busts his nose. And you could see Ray Ford from about round 6 was completely gassed out, which I don't know why that is. Like, this guy is fairly new to the division. Oshaki Foster's been in this division for ages. If anybody is getting old for this division or outweighing this division, I thought it would have been Oshaki Foster. You know, he's been in here for a long time. Might be one of his last fights at this division. Can he keep making this weight? Those are the questions you'd ask about Oshaki Foster, not about the newcomer to the division, but Ray Ford. After 6 rounds, I don't know if it was a problem with weight or conditioning, but he had nothing left in the tank. He looked really, really poor. And Oshaki Foster I think Oshaki Foster also switched it up in the second half of that fight. I thought Oshaki Foster probably underestimated Ray Ford in the early rounds. Ray Ford was able to land some very quick counters and steal some of those rounds early. Oshaki Foster in the second half of the fight got back to what worked against Stephen Fulton. He fought that whole fight orthodox instead of switching, which worked for him. And just constant jab out there, followed in with the right hand, fight the fight at distance. Don't let Ray Ford get in close. And every time you throw something, Oshaki Foster just stepped back. So Ray Ford was sending wild punches that got absolutely nowhere near Oshaki Foster. And I guess the biggest talking point coming out of that fight is who next for Oshaki Foster. We saw the Shakur face-off with Oshaki Foster. For me, I don't see it happening. I don't see it being made, if I'm being honest. It's 2 different divisions. That's the biggest thing. Oshaki Foster, says, all right, let's do it. At lightweight, the last time we saw Shakur Stevenson was at super lightweight. Does he want to drop down? It's definitely not going to happen at 135. We know that for certain. I would prefer to see Oshaki Foster in there with Emmanuel Navarrete. I think even stylistically, that's a very good fight because Oshaki Foster, he's going to be wanting to fight on the back foot, throwing that jab out. And Emmanuel Navarrete, he's going to be chasing after him all night. I think it's a very, very good stylistic fight. A bit like William Zepeda versus Shakur Stevenson. So I'd like to see that fight. It is for a few belts at the 135 division. If not that one, probably Kakache. I just don't see the Shakur Stevenson fight actually eventuating. If it does, probably at lightweight, they'd have to reach some sort of agreement because Shakur's not going to be at 135. And we know for a fact that, Oshaki Foster might be bold and say, all right, I'll move up 2 divisions. But I think you'll put yourself at a significant disadvantage if you try to do that. All right, we got a lot of breaking news. A heap has come out this week. Jamal Charlo to face an Australian fighter on the Zoo versus Spence card. I did say, I think, we're looking at people maybe like Kira Rushton, Callum Peters. There's not too many names in and around that I think Jamal Charlo might face. Could we see Brock Jarvis? Look, I've got no idea. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure I'm confident in saying any of those guys are actually ready to be taken on Jamal Charlo. Callum Peters is a very experienced amateur fighter, so it's not going to take him very long in the professional games to climb those ranks. Like, Callum Peters is a guy that's had over 100 amateur fights. So he's probably the best bet. Kira Rushton as well, I think can give Jamal Charlo a good fight. Jamal Charlo is a very, very good fighter. I'm just not sure whether any of those guys are quite ready for it. Noel McCallion calls for a fight with Jai Apataya.
Big announcement for Vegas. Garcia against Ben, September 12th. How about adding Mikaelian versus Apataya on the same card? 2 WBC world champions defending their belts against 2 Zuffa fighters. With that said, happy Memorial Weekend.
This was a very sort of topsy-turvy 24 hours because, less than a day later after this came out on social media that Noel McCallion's calling for the Jai Apataya fight, the WBC mandate Noel McCallion to be taken on David Benavidez. And I made a video specifically for this to talk about it. But in terms of Noel McCallion versus David Benavidez, love the fight. I think it's a very good fight. I think David Benavidez most definitely spanks Noel McCallion. But there's a lot of question marks going around about these 3 guys. Is Noel McCallion just going to vacate his belt and take on Jai Apataya? Is he going to try and hold that belt and take on David Benavidez? But ultimately, he will lose that fight. It is a bit of a mess. I was surprised in the timing that WBC came out and did this, especially when Noel McCallion's in negotiations and trying to finalize a deal with Jai. And it makes me feel like WBC don't want Noel McCallion fighting Jai Apataya, whether that's a Zuffa thing, whether it's a thing completely other than that. I have no idea. But I thought the timing was odd. Noel McCallion hasn't really held that belt for a very long time to say he needs to be mandated to fight. It's not as like Noel McCallion's just been holding that belt ransom for 2 years. He got it in December of last year. And as soon as he's trying to finalize a mega fight against Jai Opetaia, you tell him, no, you can't do that. You have to take on David Benavidez. And I do think there is a bit of favoritism there from the WBC for David Benavidez. Raymond Muratella will defend his IBF lightweight title against Robson Conceição. That'll be August 1st in Las Vegas. The bout will serve as the co-main event to Lamont Roach versus William Zepeda, that being for the vacant WBC lightweight title. The IBF mandatory fight between Aaron McKenna and Etanoza Olaha is set to take place at the 3 Arena in Dublin, August 8th. And this is where the big sort of rumor comes in. It is rumored that the fight will be a Zuffa boxing card with Callum Walsh. Stevie McKenna was signed to Zuffa not so long ago, and it sounds like Zuffa are also going to sign Aaron McKenna and Etanoza Olaha for that fight. Now, cool, great. I don't really care. If you want to sign for Zuffa, I don't care. If you want to stay with a normal promoter, I don't care. I have nothing against either way of doing it. The thing that I found most interesting about this is it's an IBF mandatory. And we just saw the IBF strip Jai Opetaia. So if Zuffa signed both of these guys, what's going to happen for that IBF mandatory? Is it still going to be a mandatory, or IBF going to say, all right, our two best fighters in our division, all right, in this division, in this governing body, our two best are just going to be dispatched and said, no, you're not allowed to fight for that belt. And this is where stuff really starts to heat up, become a civil war, because the IBF will be looking, all right, our best two middleweights right now have just been taken from Zuffa, people that we've outcasted and said, you're not allowed to fight for our belts. So, yeah, we might be seeing some big news about that. Edgar Berlanga is set to face Hot Rod Kalajic on July 26th as part of a Zuffa boxing card in New York City. Murat Garsiev will defend his WBA regular title against Tony Yoka July 11th in Moscow. Chanika Johnson will defend her undisputed bantamweight titles against Dina Thorslund on the 8th of August in Orlando, Florida. Early pick, I think Dina Thorslund will win that fight. I love Chanika Johnson. I think she's a very good fighter, but I think Dina Thorslund is an exceptional fighter. And I think we're going to see how good Dina Thorslund is in that fight. Following Ellie Scottney's vacation of her undisputed super bantamweight titles, Sky Nicholson has been promoted to outright WBC super bantamweight champion. Bit of a shame. I was begging for that fight. I really wanted to see Sky Nicholson versus Ellie Scottney. It's not going to happen, and Sky Nicholson has had her fight announced against a Japanese fighter. Apologies. It will be up on your screen so you can see it anyway. Queensbury and Matchroom targeting a 5v5 rematch in October or November. Yeah, I'm sure Eddie Hearn wants to get his lick back. I mean, the fact that he was beaten comprehensively by Queensbury in the last one, yeah, he want that back again. And I think Queensbury have one of the best stables in all of boxing. I think it is exceptional. Matchroom have some good talents, but I think Queensbury is just by far. Frank Warren is a phenomenal promoter, and I love these 5v5s. I love when these guys get together and put on big fights. And I love when Queensbury, you know what, Queensbury is one of those promotions that are not scared about having their own fighters fight their own. So I would love to see that later this year. Whether it eventuates or not, we'll have to wait and see. Rumors circulating, this was from Sean Ziddle, that David Benavidez's next fight will be his last under his management of Samson Lukowitz. Eddie Hearn believes Shakur Stevenson has already signed with Zuffa and that they are paying 5 times more than any other promotion.
Shakur Stevenson. Yeah. Does that kind of open the door for you to work with Shakur? Obviously,
no, Shakur signed with Zuffa, so that'll be him moving forward. But I just don't know who they're going to put him in with, because you see, Zuffa are paying as a business, they're paying these guys 5 times more than anybody else will pay them. To fight who? Like, who are you going to put Shakur? You can put Shakur in with O'Shaquie Foster and give him $15 million? I mean, good luck to Shakur. I love him. I'd said to him, fucking great, mate. But yeah, it's a weird model, and it's a model that's not going to last very long.
Mauricio Suleiman has confirmed that Usyk is ordered to face Kabayel. Yeah, we need to see that fight. No doubt about it. That is the next fight to have. And you know what? I think after that Rico Verhoeven fight, go back a few weeks and you say, all right, who wins? Usyk, Kabayel? You say 70% Usyk, 30% Kabayel. I think Kabayel is, bordering on that 50-50. After what we saw Usyk versus Rico Verhoeven, I think Kabayel has closed that gap significantly about the chances in this fight. And to be honest with you, if that's the Usyk we see against Kabayel, I think Kabayel is 80% favorite, because that's how bad Alexander Usyk was. All right, my moments of the week. What has caught my eye in this week of combat sports? We have had our first few looks at the White House UFC Octagon. Obviously, UFC Freedom 250 coming up very, very shortly. A massive card, an event that I'm very, very psyched for, and the ring is looking sick. D'Angelo Evans scores a brutal KO victory that's most definitely going to put him as a nomination for Knockout of the Year 2026.
They're at the house. Oh! Big shot from Evans! Celebration. And here we take a look at the highlight. There's a left hook right.
Turki Al-Sheikh wants Canelo to fight not just 1 or 2 more years. He wants him fighting for another 5 to 7 years under his promotional company.
You are one of the greatest human beings, not only fighters. And you know now what we are talking, what we are thinking. Canelo, we want him to stay with us 5, 7 years, not 1 or 2 years. Now we are talking, we have big fights. In September, we will announce a world title. We will have in 27 one big fight, and we will continue. And we hope one day the final fights we will do it together in Mexico, around 500,000 of people or something like that. This is the idea.
I mean, Turki Al-Sheikh, that's very, very bold, but I don't think Canelo has 5 years left in him. I'd give him maybe 3. I think a few more big fights, a few more good fights, and we're going to be seeing the best of Canelo really start to take a downward spiral. He wasn't overly great against Terence Crawford. He was showing his age in that fight. Another 5 to 7 years, it ain't going to happen. Ilia Topuria has a very special white rose for Justin Gaethje, posting some pictures there of a white rose presented to Justin Gaethje's memorial. I think Justin Gaethje has got a very, very tough task ahead of him. Ilia Topuria, we know how good he is. We know how spiteful he is. We know how talented he is. What he did to Max Holloway, what he did to Charles Oliveira. And now he's had a very difficult past 12 months. I would hate to be Justin Gaethje in this situation because I think Ilia Topuria is going out there to seriously hurt someone. Amanda Serrano equals Christy Martin's KO record of 32 professional knockout victories. Great performance by Amanda Serrano. Does what she needs to do. And you know what? Equals one of the greatest women of all time. And I think Amanda Serrano, by the end of this year, I actually think she'll overtake her. Ryan Rizicki is doing his best impression of George Foreman in preparation of his clash with Chris Billum-Smith. Rizicki was seen pulling cars up hills, a bit like George Foreman did all those years ago. This clip came out, early last week, but Eddie Reynoso, there's a clip going around of Eddie Reynoso showing how elite he is at coaching, basically telling Frank Sanchez what's going to happen at the end of the first round, predicting the future, telling Frank Sanchez exactly what to do, and Frank Sanchez follows his coaching and lands that knockout punch against Richard Torres Jr. This morning, we saw the first press conference between Anthony Joshua and Christian Prenger, and Anthony Joshua putting the absolute fear of God in Christian Prenger, making him gulp like a cartoon character in their face-off. And you know what? Anthony Joshua had some very stern words, and he looks like a guy that is seriously, seriously in there to hurt someone and make a big statement. I think we're going to see one of the best Anthony Joshuas we've seen. Look, I don't significantly think Christian Prenger is a great fighter. Anthony Joshua's had a very tough, go of it recently from that Daniel Dubois defeat, for everything that happened to his friends and his training partners. I think Anthony Joshua is going to come out here under his new tutelage with Usyk and seriously make a statement. And I would hate to be Christian Prenger in that ring. All right, let's preview this weekend's action because there is a lot of fights going on this weekend. June 4th in Montreal, Canada, we have a co-main of Imam Katia versus Mikhail Diallo. Imam Katia had a very, very good comeback victory after losing to David Morrell. He beat Adam Deans within 3 rounds. Deans actually went to a decision with Zach Parker and Malik Zanard, so he's not awful, but Imam Katia made a very, very good statement. I actually think that his fight against David Morrell, he won. I do. I think he won that fight, and he's going to have to try and rebuild after that defeat, and the defeat's now going to look worse. If you didn't watch the fight, you don't know how it happened, but if you just read his fact sheet, it's going to look worse after what we just saw David Morrell throw up in his last fight. And the main event is Albert Ramirez versus Leron Richards. Albert Ramirez now 22 victories, 19 knockouts, 0 losses. He had a great stoppage victory over Jerome Popolone in his last fight, and I think he's going to rip through Richards. I don't think it's going to be very difficult at all. I think he'll stop Richards, and I think it'll be quite early. June 6th in Japan, Wilbardo Garcia versus Andrew Maloney. This is for Garcia's IBF junior bantamweight title. I think this one's a 50-50 fight. I don't think either fighter is a unbelievable fighter. I think they're both good fighters. I think they're both guys that will always sort of sit around that world challenger level. But we saw what Andrew Maloney threw up against Junto Nakatani. I mean, he was comprehensively beaten by a guy that's at the top of the division. And I think this fight's very, very close. I do. I can't quite decide. I'll probably go with the favorite and probably go with the current champion in Wilbardo Garcia. I think Andrew Maloney will have to do something incredibly well in Japan to get this victory. I think he's going to have to box his absolute shoes off and have one of his best career performances to be able to beat Wilbardo Garcia. Like I said, I don't think Wilbardo Garcia is a great fighter either. I just think he will be better on the night than Andrew Maloney. June 6th in Sheffield, England, Josh Padley versus Aqib Fiaz. This is a 12-round contest at the super featherweight division. I think Josh Padley will simply just outwork Fiaz. And I like the power that Josh Padley's showing in this division. He's a big dude for this division, and he's a very powerful puncher. But I like the work rate and the output from Josh Padley. He likes to be on the attacking. He likes to let his hands fly, and I think he'll just outwork Fiaz. Maybe not get the late stoppage, but I do believe he gets the decision victory. June 6th in Bournemouth, England, we go to a Zuffa boxing card international. Chris Smith versus Ryan Rizicki, a 10-round contest. I think this fight here has all the makings for a fight that we'll look at the end of the year and say this was one of the fights of the year. I do. I think the way both of these guys like to fight, they're both going to go forward. They're both going to try and find the pocket. They're both going to start throwing hands and just be nasty and brutal with each other. I think we're going to see a very, very entertaining contest here. I'd be so surprised if this one is a snooze fest. I back Chris Smith to beat Ryan Rizicki. It'll be who has the better gas tank, who can take the harder punch. And I think Chris Smith has shown a little bit more over his career against high-level opponents. And I think he'll be more skillful and land the more clinical punches against Ryan Rizicki. The co-main is Jack Massey versus Chev Clark. Another very, very close fight, but I'm going to back Chev Clark to get the victory. All right, guys, thank you all very much for watching this podcast episode. If you did enjoy it, please do head down there and give the video a like. If you are new, do subscribe. I still need a name for this podcast. So if anybody's got any ideas, please chuck it in the comments. We also need a name for my Moments of the Week. Or we can just keep it Moments of the Week. I wouldn't mind, building this podcast up each and every single week, trying to improve on it in little ways and in different ways. And eventually I would like to start doing this podcast as a live thing so we can interact with the community. I did put a post out in the community page that I do want to start, talking about some other stuff on this podcast, on this channel. We are a boxing channel. I do love boxing, and we're going to continue to make the boxing content. So all the boxing content that I've already been making, none of that is going to be halted or stopped. But I would like to start incorporating some talk about other sports that I do enjoy, including UFC. And when I talk about UFC, it'll probably be for the bigger events, the bigger names. I'm a very casual UFC viewer. Don't look for me for some expert insight into fighters that are fighting their third fight, right? That's not me. I'm not that guy. There's plenty of people out there. But I thought we could have some enjoyable talks about some of the fights, have a bit of fun, chuck on a watch along. I would love to do the UFC Freedom 250 watch along. I'd love to do the Conor McGregor watch along. And I think it's a good way to interact with the community. So hopefully we can start implementing that over the next few weeks, a bit of talk about that. I even said that I'd be open to, if there's a power slap event going on, we could do a casual stream to something like that, talk boxing during it, watch a bit of fighting. It is a fucking mess of a sport, but sometimes you do just get two guys that are scoring some great knockouts. So we'll see what happens. If you have any ideas, please do let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of today's podcast. Any talking points? Do you agree with me? Some of those fights, I'm pretty sure that Holly Holm one might trigger a lot of people, but what can you fucking do? Like, subscribe. I'm out of here, guys. See ya.